and children and foster care programs. I'm proud to partner with Portland City Commissioner Hugh Daly and Gresham City Councilor Morales, who could not be with us today, in leading our Complete Count initiative. And I know we are each committed to making sure that everyone is counted. The census impacts all of us. That's why we're all here together today, to celebrate this victory. But we need to continue our efforts to move our democracy forward. Standing with me are our community partners from Unite Oregon, the Coalition of Communities of Color, Latino Network, United Way, and the Oregon Food Bank. I'm also honored to have the support of Portland State University's Population Research Center and the Office of Governor Kate Brown, as well as our board from Multnomah County. We stand here with hundreds of local government partners across the country working diligently to be sure our communities are counted. The clock is ticking. We need to stay committed to ensure the integrity of the census. This morning's decision is being celebrated across the country, but we have to remember this is one victory in a long battle. There have been deep, intentional efforts to stoke fear within our communities. This is not an accident. Regardless of the Supreme Court's decision, we all need to continue our efforts to ensure maximum participation and inclusion in the 2020 census, particularly among hard-to-count communities that include people of color, urban and low-income households, immigrants, and non-English speaking populations, and young children. Let me be clear. This is about power and money. In Oregon, an additional congressional seat is at stake, and our portion of nearly $900 billion a year in federal funding. If the Trump administration thinks that the country is not watching, they are sorely mistaken. Thank you.
You guys never leave enough room for my notes up here. So before I begin my official remarks, I just want to invite everyone here to pause and recognize this glimmer of hope in an otherwise very troubled time. The Supreme Court, although it now sways conservative, saw through this ruse not only to foment fear in our immigrant and refugee communities, but to benefit the Republican Party. In light of the devastating deaths of our borders, families being torn apart, and children being treated worse than animals at our border, we need all the hope we can get to get through the next 18 months. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be able to celebrate this ruling with you today. We know that conducting the census is one of the most fundamental functions of the federal government. We also know that the federal government appears committed to abdicating many of their core responsibilities to the people they serve. The 2020 census is facing unprecedented challenges, and the possible inclusion of the citizenship question was perhaps the worst. In today's ruling, members of the court noted that the evidence tells a story that does not match the Secretary's explanation. We know that this question was never about gathering data or improving government services. We know it was always another racist tool of the Trump administration designed to intimidate our immigrant and refugee communities. I'm proud to be part of a community and to represent a city that stands with and defends its immigrant and refugee communities. I know the work is just beginning, but I'm pleased to know that our region's elected officials, community leaders and advocates, and attorneys will continue to work together to oppose a reconsideration of the question and any other attacks on the census. The census has lots of implications for funding, but equally important is that it is about who can be visible and participate in our democracy. I commit to continuing to work with our partners on behalf of the City Council to reaffirm the rights of all our residents. I'm especially pleased to focus our efforts on traditionally hard-to-count communities who especially deserve to know that they have a right to be counted, to participate freely in civic affairs, and to have political representation and power.
Good afternoon. I wanted to just say that today was a small victory for humanity. And to underscore that, I wanted to read a quick passage. In The Merchant of Venice, a play written by William Shakespeare over 500 years ago, the question was asked, hath not a Jew hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions, fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winters and summers? As a Christian is, if you prick us, do we not bleed? It goes on, and you get the point, because while people can argue about its interpretation, to me it simply underscores that we're all part of the same human family. So today's Supreme Court ruling to me confirms the intent of our framers to count every person in the United States once a decade to ensure the fair and unfettered distribution of our shared resources in the furtherance of our republic, irrespective of how we got to the country. By removing, even temporarily, the citizenship question from the soon-to-be distributed census form, the Supreme Court has affirmed our Constitution and the rule of law. Every person, that's an unambiguous term, every person should be counted. The Coalition of Communities of Color is committed, as is every person standing before you today, to ensuring that the populations we represent in our 19-member organization and all the populations you see up here, immigrants, refugees, people of color, Muslims, children, all of us who are frequently undercounted, all of us are counted. We must be counted because we all count. As the great-great-great-grandson of an involuntary immigrant, I'm personally grateful to be able to show CCC support today and to tell why all lives being counted matters.
Good afternoon. My name is Casey Chama. I am the Executive Director of Unite Oregon. Unite Oregon is a proud member of We Count Oregon campaign and Complete Count. We are grateful for the partnership we have with the City of Portland, Office of Civic Life, and Multnomah County, as well as our coalition partners. This ruling will protect our democracy and our nation, as folks before me said. The Supreme Court will make sure that our community participates and this immigrant refugees participate in census count freely, without fear without fear. Our community also feels empowered in the court's decision. It reaffirms that we count and that we matter. We applaud the Supreme Court's decision today to prohibit the inclusion of untested, unnecessary, ill-timed citizenship question. Now, we must renew our importance to work to ensure our community that the census participation is safe, important, and necessary. The Supreme Court decision means that immigrant community can now participate in the census without fear, and we are excited about that. Communities, particularly especially community of color, receive their fair share of critical federal state funding for schools, clinics, hospitals, and other resources. Adding citizenship question in census does not serve no purpose other than discouraging immigrant communities to participate. The principle behind the census is simple: count everyone who lives in the United States. The Constitution is clear about that, and we should be able to participate without fear. We encourage our participation of the immigrant refugee community not to make harder like the Commerce Department is proposing. We must count everyone. States rely on census to redistricting, mapping, where provide services and deciding how to spend resources in states' funding. Without accurate count, the process will fall apart. We know why the Trump administration wants the citizenship question. The purpose of it to suppress immigrant participation and help the right-wing gerrymandering. The state and federal level legislative district in 2021. That's not a democracy. That is a dictatorship. We applaud again U.S. Supreme Court for their initial ruling, but we know that this is not the end of the fight. We need our communities to keep saying loud and clear, everyone and everybody counts. We will keep fighting this racist citizenship question until the end. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carmen Rubio, and I'm the Executive Director of Latino Network. The Supreme Court's decision to not allow the citizenship question will lead to a more equitable and complete count of our communities, which have been historically undercounted and underrepresented. Latino Network is a Latino-led, Latino-serving social service provider here in the metro region. Each year, we serve over 7,200 families in Multnomah County and Washington County and provide the Latinx community with access to culturally specific education, early childhood services, family stability services, and provide critical wraparound supports to at-risk youth and their families. These programs would not be possible without state and local investments that are allocated every year using valuable census information. That means that our Latinx and immigrant community participation in the 2020 census is crucial. The census is used to ensure that all our communities receive their fair share of federal and state funding for critical services like schools, clinics, hospitals, transportation options, parks, and housing programs. The new population count from this census will also determine our political representation in Congress and at the state level, which is very much needed. Since the 2016 election, the Trump administration has engaged in harmful, mean-spirited, anti-immigrant rhetoric and has initiated multiple attacks against our communities. The culture of fear and anxiety is pervasive. These words have real impacts on real lives. As a culturally specific organization, we have had to step up our efforts to address the safety and crisis preparedness and trauma of our staff, our participants, partners, and community residents at large. If a citizenship question were added, we know that many people in households with immigrants, including those who are U.S. citizens, would simply choose not to fill out the census form, and that has disastrous effects for our local community. And this would continue their recession more deeply into fear. That means our communities would continue to be underserved, underrepresented, and left without a real political voice. We reject this. We cannot let this continue. And we applaud the Supreme Court's decision to hold this administration accountable for their unlawful efforts to discourage our communities from participating in the census. But like others have said, we know our work is far from over. Whether it's decided that a citizenship question will be included or not, we must continue to work to ensure that all communities are counted in 2020. We urge all of us to hold our government accountable and demand fair and equal representation of all of those who reside and contribute to our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And I wanted to mention that in addition to Latino Network and Unite Oregon, we also have the United Way, Amanda Whalen, the Chief Impact Officer, who is here today, as well as the Oregon Food Bank's Jeff Clean. And we want to open up this part of the press conference to any questions that you may have. We have some subject matter experts who are here today who can answer any additional questions. And they include Portland State University's Population Research Center Director, Jason Jurgovich, as well as the Census Project Manager for the Office of Governor Kate Brown, Aldo Solano. So if anybody has any additional questions, we will take them now.
For Carmen, what would go through the mind of somebody, a Latino, filling out a census questionnaire with that question on it? What would they be thinking? What would they be fearing?
They would be feeling like this is not a country that really is valuing our voice. And they're caught between wanting to serve the community and fill it out and feeling the deep fear of being ripped apart from their families and that potential. Our communities live with this fear every single day currently, and it's only ratcheted up in these last 2.5 years.
I'm not sure who would answer this, but how close is Oregon to gaining another congressional seat? Is that really in the balance like that, or is it?
So after the 2010 census, Oregon was roughly 41,000 people short of an additional congressional seat. So very close. We were about the 4th to 5th state behind the 435th seat.
All right. So if there are no additional questions, we thank you all for coming, and we will have some photo opportunities with our commissioners and our speakers here today. And we thank you all for coming. Thanks, guys.